Hello, everyone. We are live with episode 21 on the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. I am your host, Neil LaFortune. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is definitely a special day. It is a somber day with the 19th anniversary of 9/11. And us Canadians certainly want to relay our feelings to you that we are indeed thinking of our American friends and everybody that paid the price that day and all the families that it has affected over the years. We are definitely thinking of you today. I'm very excited to bring on my guest, Mr. Michael Grando. I'm going to do a little intro here. I see that he has joined here. I'm going to send him to join the video, but Michael was born and raised in Western New York, now makes Nashville home. He is a believer of the less is more approach, has a meat and potato style, and along with great natural instinct, this gives him the ability to always play what's right for the music, combined with a strong work ethic, a great beard, good looks, and a great sense of humor. He is a very highly sought after live and studio drummer and has played with such artists as Chris Knight, Joe Diffie, Charlie Daniels, Jason Aldean, Don Baird, many more. So welcome. Thanks, Michael. Nice to see you.
Thank you, man. I'm glad we get to do this. I was looking forward to doing it this year in person, but obviously the universe had other plans, so here we are, brother.
It absolutely did. I was heartbroken to hear of the passing of your former boss, the great Joe Diffie, and that venue is probably 20 minutes or so from my house, and I hope that you do get to play Boots and Hearts one of these days. Because
we've done it before. It was great, man, and I love Canada. So being a Western New York, I grew up around Rochester and Finger Lakes area, so a short hop to go across the border and do all that stuff. So I love Canada, and I hopefully I'll be back soon, man.
Yep, we love it here too, and we're grateful to our American friends. And as you know, I make a lot of my living, or if you don't know, playing in the States a lot with the tribute that I play in. So this is really not a fun time really for anybody not working. So, but we appreciate you. I appreciate you spending the time, and thank you for cleaning up after your training session there. And,
yeah, well, it was looking a little fuzzy, so I figured, it's the least I can do.
Yes, me and you both closing the pool today, and there was a few choice words that I had because I ultimately got soaking wet, as I always do.
Well, around the pool, it's going to happen.
It is going to happen. We're going to get a sign there that says you're going to get wet. Anyway, what have you been doing? Sorry, I'm going to stop kicking my stand here.
That's okay.
It's the feet, right? It's the feet. What have you been doing since March when COVID shut down the live playing?
Well, man, it was obviously for people who know, or maybe some folks don't know, but I lost my friend and my boss pretty early on. It was like the end of March, I guess. So there was a period of time where I didn't do much because I really was kind of in shock, I guess, But eventually shake it off, and I was like, well, I have to, I'm still here, man. So as much as I love Diffie and as much as I miss him and all the things that go along with that, I got to keep moving forward. So
Right.
I took advantage of the opportunity to be at home more, which I have not been for a long time, forced or not, it's still been great to be able to be at home with my wife and son and my dogs and all that stuff every day. And I also decided it would be a good opportunity to get my feet wet and start putting some gear in the downstairs of the house here, all finished, and turn it into my little studio, which I've done, which really was more about, it was more about sanity for me than it was income, because let's not kid each other. At this day and age, everybody and their brother's got a rig, and they're all recording, they're all doing stuff, which is great. So for me, it was just more about being able to keep playing, man, and stay connected to the guys that I loved and I play with. Just another way to, you got to figure it out. I mean, they did the same thing with my son who started high school this year. He got accepted at NSA, which he was so excited about. Nashville School of the Arts, high school. So yeah, it was his big, freshman year. It was supposed to be a big deal, and this all kind of changed how everything worked out. But he's adapted, and we all have, and you just got to do it, man, for the time being, until things get better.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to sound like I'm being preachy or anything, man, but if anybody knows about it, I know how devastating it can be. So, for people to do the right thing and wear the mask and do the social distancing and take care of each other, man, it's crucial, really. So.
I agree. It's science, right? It really
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's not like, this isn't just a fairy tale that they will tell you that this is the best way to deal with it until there's another way to deal with it, So, for everybody to stay safe and take care of each other is, the most important thing we can do. So.
That is good. How old were you when drums and music entered your life?
My mom will tell you that I was kicking and drumming before I was even born. I got my first set of drums at the age of 3.
Wow.
Christmas. And it was pretty much all downhill from there, man.
You're born. No, I'm kidding.
It was always there,
Yeah.
I guess some people are just born to do it. So I feel very, on a lot of levels, very fortunate and blessed, and on some other levels, cursed, because we all know that it's not for the faint of heart,
No,
But,
it is a calling. It is definitely something that you're right, for the faint of heart. It's exactly it. I remember Jonathan Mover saying that it weeds out the weaklings.
Yeah, man. Oh, absolutely. And there's no people shouldn't come into any of this business with, if you think that you want to do this because you're going to be rich or famous, you're going to be very disappointed. So, if you're in it for the right reason, man, you love to play and you don't mind the scuffle and everything that goes along with it, then there's nothing else like it in the world, and it'll take over your entire existence, which, it has. But, and there's no shame in doing it on another level too, and playing on the weekends with your buddies and having a straight gig and doing all that too, man. There's a lot to be said for that. So
There is that for some of us as well, if things are not coming back to the level. I know some Gretsch drummers, Chad Melcher out in Alberta.
Yeah, sure. I love Chad.
Isn't he the best? He was one of my early guests on the program. What an amazing human being. He's working a day job and playing with Gord. So and for years I worked and taught.
Dude, I've done this. Yeah, I have. I've done the same thing for years. I mean, when things were lean and when I first, to jump the gun on the question, I'm sure you'll probably ask me at some point. But when I came to Nashville, when I worked a day gig and went to school some and played gigs and, raised a family and did all of that stuff, because that's what you do. You just take care of the business, But you have to be, man, to be committed and really love it. It makes the difference between sticking it out and being successful or not,
Yeah, you have to love the music. And it sounds, I remember hearing that as a drummer in my 20s, you've got to love the music. You've got to do it for the right reasons. And in my head, I was still, I'm going to be the drummer in Rush, or I'm going to be, even though they had a good one, I'm going to still, that was a goal. It was naive, but.
Yeah, but you know what, man, there's nothing, if you're going to go for it, man, go for it, and when we're at that age, we all want to be the drummer in the band that we admire the most, Yeah. So, there's nothing wrong with aspiring to be as great as Neil was, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it just shows, that's another hallmark of the level of commitment that you have as a musician, that you see somebody that you hold in that high esteem and set your sights for that,
Yeah, that's amazing. What were you listening to or what were you playing to when you were that little on the drums, or just music in general?
I mean, when I was really little, obviously I didn't have much in the way of my own taste, I guess, at that point. When I was that tiny, my dad was a saxophone player, and there was always music playing in the house. Uh, a lot of jazz, a lot of straight ahead, obviously, with him being a horn player. But he also played,
Yeah.
played a lot of rock and roll gigs and stuff. So I mean, I listened to. There was always music in the house, and I had a pretty broad spectrum of stuff being presented to me from pretty early on in my life. So.
Okay.
Yeah, which has been amazing, man. I mean, I'm grateful to have had that experience. It's not, a lot of people don't get to do that until later on. They have a lot of making up for lost time to do.
Yeah, I firsthand know what that's what that's all about. Even though music was very much a big part, I always wanted to play. Didn't play till I was later, till I was older, I should say. When did you do any lessons, or did you do lessons early on?
Um, I did some for a little while when I was pretty young in school,
Yep.
and like school band stuff, and I just I wasn't into it, man.
Yep.
I just went off and did my thing. And as I got older, it became more evident that that was just kind of how it was going to be. Um,
Yep.
and now that I've gotten older, I go back and I think about that, and I wish that I'd had the discipline to do some of that stuff because it probably would have made my life a lot easier in a lot of ways. But there's a lot to be said for uh, letting your natural ability and be your muse and guide you too. I
Yeah.
think really that's um, not to say that I'm one, but I think that's what separates a lot of guys who are truly exceptional from guys who have a ton of facility. Absolutely great, man, but when you have it, in the heart,
Yeah,
it,
that's the big difference.
it's a different thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you,
I mean, you can play every kind of chop known to man, but I'd rather listen to 20 minutes of Levon just laying it down.
yeah, I remember Steve Jordan saying that he would rather listen to Al Jackson Jr. rather than somebody playing a whole bunch of
Yeah,
stuff.
because it doesn't mean anything, man. And what those guys did, man, Duck Dunn and and all those cats played was, it was from the heart. It was amazing.
Yeah, and my son loves that old stuff, that old music. Just loves. Are we there?
Yeah.
Hey, we're good. Yeah, my boy he's been playing drums since he was 2. He listens to. I don't think he listens to anything past 1975. He
How
might.
old is he?
He's 20.
Oh man. Well, there you go. My son is 15.
Yep.
And so he inherited the other half of the rhythm section. He's like,
Ooh.
yeah, he's a bass player.
Wow.
And he
That's cool.
started, yeah, it's cool. We play together and do stuff,
Oh,
track here at the house and stuff. It's pretty neat, man.
oh man, what an
Um,
opportunity.
he started, he went to a Waldorf school, which you may or may not be familiar with, but
No.
a lot of the emphasis is on art and music and natural things, that kind of stuff. And we wanted him to go to some place like that because I didn't have that advantage. I went to a public school, and when I was growing up, man, public school was like you either did what they told you to do, or else you were a problem. And so there you go. So I was a problem.
Yeah.
But that said, they started with him in that school in the third grade. They played stringed instruments, started playing cello, so he can read, and that's how he got into NSA. He auditioned on cello for the orchestral conservatory there. So,
Awesome.
yeah, man, he's got a lot more together at 15 than I did. But he's the same way. I like, uh, he's been getting turned on to good music since he was tiny. Since he's was bit old enough to get in the car, there was always something
Yeah.
playing, or in the house or whatever. So um, I think it's important to pass that on to them. They need to know about that stuff, man.
My
So,
son used to sing the head to milestones when he was probably 2.5 or 3. He would
dude,
sing. I'm not kidding. It was hilarious.
I don't doubt you for a minute. I'm just laughing because I just, I got to tell you this because I was so proud. He was asking me about, what bass player should I listen to, man? What, who's really bad that I could listen to? And so, well, man, there's a lot of stuff you can check out. I said, but probably one of the benchmarks that you can go to really dig how heavy it is like go listen to Jocko.
Yeah.
So he goes and I said, go find Donna Lee and listen to that. So he listens to Donna Lee, and 2 days later, I'm in the kitchen doing something, and I hear him downstairs, and what's he doing? He's teaching himself Donna Lee.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, so, that's a proud dad moment. So, for sure.
That is cool. Oh, man. So what were you playing early on? Were you playing with other kids? Were you playing drums with adults in a musical situation at all?
Yeah, again, because of where I come from, with my dad being a musician and everything, there are always players around, coming around the house, or he'd take me to gigs or to a session or to whatever. And I always gravitated towards the drums, and everybody was always super cool, man, and let me play,
Yep.
and, all that stuff. And so, I was playing on some level since I was, since I got that first set. But,
That's a big deal.
it really it got a hold of me really, probably, in earnest around the time that I was 15 or so, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was, I joined my first band, and that was it. So, I just kind of snowballed from there, man.
And
But
what kind of stuff were you playing in that band?
it was all like classic rock stuff, like the earliest guys that I was really into were like, I got really into Ian Pace. I got really into Bonham. I got really into Mitch Mitchell. Like the heavy, Keith Moon, Don Brewer,
Mm,
Bill Ward. All those guys that played. I just wanted to play that. I wanted to play heavy music.
that's
So
awesome.
that's what we did. We played a lot of classic rock and a lot of, uh, everything from Sabbath to Creedence to, all that stuff, man. When REO Speedwagon was big back in the day, so
Yes. Yes, they were.
uh,
Wow.
all that kind of stuff. So,
And so what kind of gigs were you playing?
um, the first gig I ever did with that band was a high school dance, as I'm sure has been repeated by a million people a million times. Um, and then it was like, it was parties and whatnot. Now I'm older, so uh, in New York State they raised the drinking age twice. Right, it went from 18 to 19, and then it went from 19 to 21. Right,
Yeah.
so within the first couple of years of playing in that band, we were like working the clubs around the town that we lived in and doing all that kind of stuff. And so I did a whole bunch of that, man. Um, and there were several bands, as is usually the case on the circuit in whatever town you're in, that are kind of
Yep.
like the bands.
Yep.
So, and we were lucky, kind of developed into one. We had a pretty good following of people, and it was fun, man. It was a great experience, a great way to learn how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Not only learning how to play drums, but how to learn how how to actually tear your drums down, set them back up again. Which I remember the first few times going, "This doesn't look anything like it did half an hour ago."
dude, that's all of that stuff came from trial and error, and from back in the day where you put a record on, man. You sat there, and I'd spend hours and hours, and I know we all did, just poring over album covers, especially any kind of live stuff like that,
Yeah.
and looking at copies of Modern Drummer until I'd worn holes in the pages, and just sitting in school when I should have been doing other stuff and drawing pictures of drum sets, and all of that, man. That's how you did it. There was no YouTube or any of that stuff. We just kind of we made it up as we went along.
Yeah, you had to really hunt for things. I remember early on, I didn't even know about Modern Drummer magazine in in late '85 when I started playing drums, and I went to the library to take out a book on drums and drumming. I had no idea that Modern Drummer even existed, and when I found out,
Right, it was
it
all over.
it was all over. In fact, I've
I
been
know.
donating some to one of my students here, and so I think I have a tote full of about 100 modern drummers
Yeah.
to give them, but I still have some real good ones from the '80s.
It's
Whatnot.
cool. I'm just to look back at those ones and that, like, it takes me back to a, a moment in time for one thing, but it
Yeah,
also is like on another level from a big deal at it's like it's cool because you forget about all that stuff, man. There's so much there's always so much gear all the time. It's just like, you forget, like, hey, 25 years ago, you know, uh, this was the big deal at the moment. It's like I never thought about it, until you
yeah,
open up that Modern Drummer and it's like, dude, I wonder whatever happened to that company or whatever. So it's pretty
yes,
cool.
and power toms and
Power toms, everything, man. The rack, the this, the that, a
yeah,
million different variations of electronic drums, and you name it. And everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel, I guess.
and on the back cover, inside cover was always for years and years the Gretsch drum ad,
Right.
and, and was that not the most beautiful drum sets and finishes that you had ever seen? It was classic, but still it was timeless, and with that walnut finish and with the font, oh man, and
Yep.
my room looks like Gretsch exploded in here. Which, and I have more stuff. There's lots, but when did Gretsch drums enter your life? Were you aware of them early on, or when did they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like going back to when I was a kid and my dad would play all those records. I mean, you're talking about, Elvin and Blakey and Tony, and the list goes on and on. And then later on, when I started to get more interested in, like, the fusion-y kind of stuff, I was thinking about today, like, some of those pictures of Eric Gravatt when he played with Weather
Yeah,
Report and he had his cymbal set way up flat, playing
yeah,
that. Same thing, that Rosewood Kit, man. Uh, you know, Phil Collins and all the work that he did with Genesis and Brand X and all of that stuff. And then one of my favorite recordings of a Gretsch drum set ever, man, is there's a GRP live record that has Carlos Vega on it.
yes,
Oh
yeah,
my God, dude. Those drums are ridiculous. That
aren't they?
blonde Gretsch kit, they're just unbelievable. And so, I mean, I was always aware of it. And then, I was really into Zappa and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. There's Vinny, there's Terry,
Yeah,
um, you know, I mean, everybody, man. It's like, and then, as I got older and started to be more interested in knowing who was doing what and how they were doing it and all that stuff. Even when guys were endorsing other products, they'd show pictures of them in the studio tracking Jeff or Vinny or whoever, and
yeah,
there they always were, you
I
know.
know. Yeah, I love
So
Jeff with his Centennial kit sometimes, and
yeah, man,
with
that Carpathian elm, that
I
finish.
I've never seen one in person. I'd love to see one that they looked unbelievable.
I've only ever seen a snare drum, never seen a whole kit, but yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
When did you get a set of Gretsch drums?
I bought my first kit probably around 2000 or
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
Um, as is the case with a lot of guys, you kind of go through your phases and try different stuff. And so I'd played several different things up to that point. And then when I moved here to Nashville, well, I'd back up a little bit. There was a studio in Atlanta when I lived there that I'd do sessions at sometimes, and they had a house kit there that was ridiculous. And
Mm.
so when I moved to Nashville, um, I started to run into a lot more guys playing them, and there are a lot. I mean, we can probably go down quite a list of cats right now who are all Gretsch guys in town here, a lot of whom are dear friends for years. But then I started hearing all that, man, and I was like, I used to live a couple blocks away from Forks, which is a very dangerous thing to
Oh,
do.
oh,
I don't anymore since they've moved and all of that business. But
right.
I used to be like, it was like, a 10-minute walk over to the shop. So,
Oh,
and that was kind of, and Gary Forkham and all of the Forkham family, man, were always so sweet and listen, and Matt and everybody. And so it became like the gathering place, like we'd all just hang, we always joked about the fact that we'd just go over there and loiter. Nobody bought anything, but all the kids were always there and you could always play. And it was, so, and obviously, Gretsch was always a big deal at Gary's shop.
hmm.
So one thing led to another, and that was it. Once I started playing, and I never looked back.
I
Well,
know. Yeah.
for the most part, anyway.
What
But
did you buy? What was your first kit in 2000?
the first kit I bought was a Renown kit. Uh, it was 10, 12, 14, 16 in a bass drum, and I had them until just a couple of years ago. I'm terrible with that stuff. I'm like always wheeling and dealing with the gear, and
Yeah.
some stuff you'll never get rid of, but you know how it is. It's like, at this point in my life, I'm kind of like operating on the one in, one out principle because there's just enough, it's running out of space for humans downstairs. It needs to be, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I have to like, monitor my drum junkie behavior and not get too crazy with it. But that was the first one I had. And I've had several different things over the years, like Purewood kits and, USA stuff and several other renowned kits and, all kinds of stuff, man.
That's
So, but that was the first one I bought.
what
So,
do you, what's in the video? There was a couple pictures that you sent me when you were playing with Joe. There's a
yeah.
kit. What is that?
I sent you a couple different photos of shows. Some of them were my USA kit, which is that ginger ale glass
That's
glitter.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
I love them, man. And
cool.
that kit is it's 12, 13, 16, and then 22. I'm usually a four-piece guy, so when I play those, it's usually 12, 16 for me or 13, 16, depending on bass drum. The other thing that you probably got pictures of, I think I sent you, was my big blonde Renown kit,
Yeah.
which is the 13, 16, and a 24.
Yeah.
So, those drums are sick, man. I know people. I know there are a lot of purists who go, "Oh, those aren't Gretsch." Yeah, they are. So, you know, and I've never put those drums on a stage or in a studio or anywhere and had anybody go, "No."
No. Yeah.
There's never any question. So,
I've had
uh,
sound say that I had a Renown kit and it was the 14 hanging floor, and I said, "I'm
yeah,
going to your floor tom," and the sound man said, "Don't." He said this. He goes, "Trust me, that sounds amazing. I think that's really deeper." He goes, it's gonna get buried in the mix." And he said the drums speak great. So
yep.
I still like to ask front of house guys like what's any suggestions on tuning or anything, and they go, the drums sound great. So
Yeah, that's
I,
what that first kit was. That first Renown kit, like that was in the day. That was
yeah,
towards the tail end of when hanging floor toms were the
yeah,
big deal. So it had two hanging floors, and eventually I wound up swapping those and got a 16 by 16 from somebody, which was unheard of because the finish from that first kit was that amber kind of, what I'm
big,
talking about,
yeah.
and they only made it for like a year or so. So finding
Okay.
drums was like looking for hen's teeth, but I found that 16 by 16, and so that was the end of the hanging floor tom. And everything I got now is all on legs, but
Yeah.
I mean they're so resonant. I don't ever worry about. I don't
Hmm.
worry about them not being heard. That's for sure.
Right.
But
Right. Do you do your own tuning? Like it's silly to ask you that perhaps because
no, not at all.
You're playing
Yeah.
like good size gigs. Do you have anybody that helps you with your gear, or do you tune and change heads and all that stuff yourself?
All the time that I was with Joe, we always had, there are always hands, so they bring all the gear to the deck and leave it for me, but I always handle my own stuff. Um, for a couple of reasons, even if I had the ability to have a tech, I'm kind of a tinkerer anyway.
Yep.
And so, to me, that was always a good way to spend an afternoon, be at the venue, hang out. I could practice a little bit. I could change some heads. I can do whatever. And hands-on. I like the hands-on thing because I like to just know what's going on with the gear. I can see if I need to replace something broke, something's loose, something's weird. You know, um, so I've always kind of been that guy. I
Yep.
just rather, I I don't have any problem spending a couple hours with my drums anytime. So
Yeah, it's
you
such a
know,
escape. It's like cutting the lawn, only enjoyable.
yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I wasn't doing that, when we were on the road, I'd be sitting in the bus or I'd be sitting in a hotel room somewhere. So I'd
Yeah.
rather, I'd rather do that anyway. But
Yeah, and feel connected to the instrument. Just being around drums. I remember being a little kid and seeing drums long before I played, and just thought they were the coolest looking thing. These round things with the other.
sure, everything's shiny and big and like
Oh,
noisy, man, and people give you sticks and tell that you can hit them as hard as you want to with a stick, and they never tell you that. So, you know,
I,
it's like,
it,
are you telling me
yeah.
I can do what now? What did you say? So that's a big deal. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, what's not to like, man? I mean, it's like, it's a musical erector set. You can build it and do all kinds of stuff, man. It's the greatest thing ever. I still
I,
get excited about it to this day. It's like, and I'm grateful for that, because I mean, after all the years of doing it and everything that goes along with it, it's easy to be, you can be jaded and take yourself too seriously or whatever else. And, uh, I know guys like that, and I try not to ever be that guy. It's like at the end of the day, man, you still get to play the drums and you love to play the drums, and that's really what it's all about. So.
how great is that?
Yeah, it's the
It
best
is.
thing ever, man. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for my entire life if there wasn't something to be said for it. So,
It. Yeah. Every time I step foot, and then this room is maybe 3 weeks old for me. Every time I step through this door here, and I can still smell the fresh carpet and the new to me '57 Renowned kit.
yeah,
All
nice.
the posters, they're really cool, and all the Gretsch stuff here. And man, oh man, it's like I get it. I'm 18 years old again, and just
Yeah, dude,
oh,
there's nothing that's better than, and I've said this before about, when people ask you about what gear you play and why you play, what you play, or whatever, and it's like, man, I want to be excited when I sit down and play the drums. And when I walk into the room and see my drums there, I get excited because I know it's going to happen. That's
yeah,
like, that's exciting to me, man. That's why I play them because I never worry about what they're going to sound like or what's going to happen. I already know.
yes,
So,
that's great.
it's a beautiful thing. So,
It is. Let's talk about your journey from Western New York. You eventually made your way south, first via Atlanta,
yep.
and then back
Yeah.
up
Then
to
back to
Nashville.
Nashville.
Yeah, how did that work out, and why did you do that? Let's talk about that.
Well, okay, so growing up in Western New York, right? We talked about, my history of playing in the local bands and all that stuff. Uh, and at some point, you have to make a decision where, uh, it's like, for lack of a better way to put it, it's kind of go time. It's that shit or get off the pot sort of a moment where it's like, well, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to, see if I can go swim with the big boys. And, being a big fish in a little pond is one thing, but being what was the big fish in a much bigger pond is a whole nother situation. And so, once again, just going back to the fact that some of us just never really had any choice in the matter. That's what we were going to be, and that's what we were going to be. So,
Right.
um, I reached a point there where I was like, okay, this is go time, man. I need to make a choice. Um, I didn't, having grown up in New York and lived in the city and lived all over New York State, whatever, I kind of already knew what that was about. I didn't really want to go to California. Uh, I knew there was a scene in Atlanta, and it was
Hmm.
kind of a mixed sort of a situation. And at that time, it was right before I made the decision, like a year and a half before the Olympics came. So
Okay.
it was like a major, there was a big boom going on all the way up to the Olympics and
Yeah.
beyond, Um, so I just was like, well, went down there a couple times and did a little scouting, do your recon, which is what I tell anybody,
Yeah.
man. It's like, I dig that you want to get there and you want to do it, but to have some kind of little plan together so that you don't wind up, in a situation where you can't handle your business. I always say that to people. It's like, don't expect to just show up and go to work because it doesn't work like that. You're going to have to, So I went to Atlanta pretty much cold, man, just hung out and found out where the places where the best cats in town hung out and played and hung around and talked to them until they figured out that I was cool. And then eventually that led to, being asked to sit in and which led to cats referring you for work, which led to a great lucrative career and a lot of cool stuff that I did there. And I still have, friends that I've had for 30 years from Atlanta, man. Sean O'Rourke is a dear friend of mine who's a monster drummer, man. He's played with ARU, he played with Sugarland, he's played with a bunch of folks, and he's just a killer drummer and a sweetheart of a guy. And he was like one of the first cats. It was like, man, he kind of was like, took me under his wing and said, these are the cats you need to hang out with. And when he needed subs, he'd call me for gigs, and one thing led to another, So,
Maybe.
and that's how it happens, man. That's how you do it. It's, Gad, I heard Gad say one time in an interview, you get your next job off of what you did on your last job.
Indeed.
And that's the truth, especially in this business. All you got to stand on is your reputation, man, and your ability, And, it takes a certain, it's a ballsy move to pack up all your stuff and go somewhere where you don't know anybody, if I say so myself. But, the option was not, the option was stay there and be miserable. And, my dad always would say, I'd rather be a has-been than a never was,
Oh, that's
So,
good.
you know,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where I was at with it. And then, and after several years in Atlanta, I was kind of like, I was sort of burned on it. The music scene was great. And like I said, there were some absolutely world-class guys there, and still are dear friends.
Mhm.
But the living situation there was like out of control, man. The traffic is, just nuts. And so I felt it was time to do something else,
Mhm.
So I did the same thing again, which is, the definition of insanity, apparently, they tell me. Uh, but I just decided, it was time to do something else, man. Came here and just did the same thing, went, hung out, met the cats, and eventually, if you can play and you're not a pain in the ass, it'll, it'll work out. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that is awesome. We have a question here.
yeah,
What type of preparation do you make before going into a session? Let's say you're going elsewhere and you're not in the basement at home, but you're
right.
session. What's a typical thing that you'll do to prep?
Um, well, I mean, there are a lot of things that go into it. If you are afforded the opportunity to have music beforehand,
Hmm.
that's always a, a plus. And making yourself some charts, however you write them, whether it's number system charts or whether you chart things out on the staff or you have your own kind of hybrid, whatever the case may be. That's always a good thing to do. If you have the opportunity, you don't always get that. Sometimes you walk into the session and they hand you the sheet right then, and you've got to read it down and figure it out,
Oh,
on the spot. Um, Otherwise, it's, I try and find out what is going to be available from a gear perspective. A lot of studios have a house kit
yeah.
that they keep set up and they have mic'd up and for expediency of tracking because not to sound cliche, but time is money, man. When you're working for somebody, they got a block booked, and spending 2.5 hours while you try and get drums dialed in is not always an option. So, you find out what the gear is and find out what they have, find out what they don't have. And I always have, my go-to stuff. You take a stick bag, take a cymbal bag, take a pedal, take a throne, 3 or 4 snare drums that are usually my go-tos to start with, and then, uh, all of that stuff, and just talking to whoever it is you're working for, if you have the opportunity to find out what it is they're trying to make happen, and uh, just all of the things you need to do to make everybody's life as easy as you can, and to be able to give whoever it is you're working for or working with ultimately what they're asking you to do. So
That's
all
great.
of those things. Yeah, I guess that's the long answer. So.
That's What were some of the artists or some of the gigs that you did when you came to Nashville?
Well, let's see. I did I did a lot of things where it was showcases, quote unquote, where you
Hmm.
learn, you go play 6 songs and maybe get $20 if you're lucky, that kind of stuff. You're
Wow.
certainly welcome, man. I hope that was helpful to you. Um, and then just the same thing, man, just various gigs, like one thing leads to another. There were several jams that were going on in town here at the time. um, there used to be a place called Blues Hideaway, which was kind of like, we always kind of referred to it sort of as the honeycomb hideout, man, because everybody in town would wind up hanging out there. They had a jam on a Tuesday night. uh, Pretty much everybody was off the road, for at least a couple of days. So all these cats would come out and hang out, and that's how you got hooked up and got gigs. And so I did, sub for a bunch of people, did various whatever, and then I wound up getting a gig with this cat named Clarence Dobbins, who's a soul singer, kind of in the
Yeah.
Otis kind of,
Yeah. Yep.
Pickett sort of vein. And so I worked for him for several years. Um, and you know, again, it's always that you get your next gig off of what you did on the last gig. You just get called for something, and cats would refer you. And um, I didn't really necessarily come here with uh, the idea in my head to be a country guy. I just came here because I knew that this was one of the 3 places you could go where there were going to be guys of this caliber to play with. The other two being, New York and LA, obviously. So that was kind of, my ultimate goal was always just to just play with good players, man, no matter what the music was. So again, I played all sorts of gigs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what you got to do. Um,
Yes. You want to put food on the table, and it's great to be versatile. Do you remember the days back when you started playing drums where you had a metal drummer and then you had a jazz guy and they
oh
played
yeah, yeah,
drum
yeah,
amps?
yeah.
Well, I had a drum teacher early on who played everything. He's a heavy jazz fusion guy, but I remember seeing him at this local place playing Lay Down Sally. And then I remember seeing him at a jazz club in Toronto where they were just tearing it up. They'd never met each other, nobody on the bandstand. They were calling these tunes, and my jaw was on the floor. And then a week later, he was playing "Lay Down Sally" in this little bar. And I said, "Man, Robin, I can't believe that it's almost sacrilegious for me to watch you play this." He goes, "It's all music, man." He goes, "Let me tell
Yeah.
you, a lot of jazz guys in the '80s, and this was late '80s. He goes, they were starving." And I wasn't. I was making good money because I could play everything, and that's what.
Well, dig it. That's the. I've always said that you can't make a sandwich out of musical integrity. So suffering for your art is fine. That's all well and good, but
I gotta
uh,
write that down.
you
That
know
is
what I
awesome.
mean? It's like, man. I mean, that's just the truth. You get different kinds of gigs in your life. Some of them are incredibly rewarding musically. Some of them are incredibly rewarding financially. And if you're very lucky, you'll come to a place where those two things converge on one another, and they intersect, and you get both. which is really an amazing thing when you can get paid well for playing with guys you'd work with for free. Uh, you know
Oh,
what I mean?
good.
But that's the reality. And when I was learning how to gig and do all that stuff, I always tell people I just became a consummate liar because when people call you up and go, "Hey man, can you play X?" I'm like, "Sure I can," and I might not be able to when we started, but by the time it was over, I could. It's like,
Yeah.
and that's how you learn. You just got to, don't be afraid to just jump in the deep end, man, and sink or swim. You'll surprise yourself at what you can really do if you have to get after it a little bit. So
That's
yeah,
wonderful. And I was not a country drummer either, but in the 90s was asked to play some local country things. And my brother had played with a country group called the Good Brothers, who were popular up here in Canada. And he wasn't a country guy either. He liked Deep Purple and Stevie Ray Vaughan and all that and blues and things. But of course you say yes because it's a working, you know,
right. I mean,
and, and, and it was a good situation. So it's great.
and there's not, I mean, there are a lot of phenomenal players who play country music too. There's a lot to be learned from all of those guys, like there is from everybody. Um, I didn't
Right.
really, I didn't have any background in it, and so I came in with the knowledge deficit and had to do my homework and figure out what was what. And you listen to Buddy Harman and all those records, man.
Yeah.
You think I knew what a Ray Price shuffle was when I showed up here? No,
Isn't
I
it?
did.
I
I
know.
didn't, but I do now. So there
Oh,
you go.
man. That was really tough for me early on is to figure out how to get that groove. It was so simple, but it was so tough to be able to make it sound like that and groove like that. And man, those guys were wonderful. And Larry London.
Yeah,
And,
Larry
and
was ridiculous, and I've been lucky enough to know some of those guys, like Jerry Croon and some of those cats
oh,
from those days, and just to hear them talk about how things used to be. That's one thing I really regret. I wish I had moved to Nashville before we lost Larry, so I could have met him. Because everybody that I know has talked about him. It's just said, man, he was just the best. So. Uh,
Larry. Yeah.
yeah, man, he was a remarkable drummer, and from all accounts, a remarkable human being too. So, which is,
Yeah.
uh, a rare combination.
I met
So,
in '88. He was up here in Toronto doing a clinic, and I got to spend about 10 minutes with him. And it changed my life completely. Just those 10 minutes, he was so encouraging to me and so warm and such a big man and just such he made you feel like you were the most important person in the room when he spent time with you. And I spoke with Sean London the other day. I sent
yeah,
Sean some DVDs of his dad that he didn't have in his collection. But yeah, loved Larry and wish that I'd seen him more. But the clinic was incredible, and spending time was absolutely wonderful.
yeah. I mean, to be around any of those kind of guys, like I've gotten to know Eddie a little
Oh,
bit over the years, just for being, I mean, standing backstage next to Eddie Bayers at the Opry, that doesn't suck. It's kind of a big deal.
it's a
So getting to know those guys and and feeling like having them treat you like a peer, I mean that was kind of a watershed moment, man. Uh,
yeah,
when you feel like well, I'm doing it. This
yeah.
is it. I'm
You're one,
doing it.
you're in the
Yeah,
club, one of
you're
the
in the club, man. That's
nine
yeah,
clubs.
and it's a hell of a club. I got to tell you.
That means
I'm just tickled to death to even
um,
be on the list, man. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And Matt Krause and I were talking about you yesterday, and
Yeah,
he just absolutely thinks the world of you. He goes, Michael is, he goes, he's one of the most, he goes, he's number one, he's an amazing drummer. I was going to do my Matt Krause voice there, but I wouldn't. But I love Matt. Oh, man, we just hit it off. We met a few years ago, and
yeah, he's sweet,
talking
man.
about you saying how wonderful player you are and how what a great guy. And he said you guys will have fun. And yeah, this doesn't suck either for me, man. This is
No,
really
me neither, man. I can't tell you how tickled I am that you asked me to do it.
yeah. And we've been chatting for maybe a little while longer. Maybe yeah, maybe I don't know, maybe a year, maybe close to something like that. Just when I found out who you
Yeah,
were,
Yeah.
Man, and I'd heard of you, but really glad to get to know you a little bit here, and hopefully we do some stuff in person where
Yeah, man.
I come to Nashville or whatnot if you're ever up here. Let's talk about the Chris Knight gig. As I was telling, man, I was listening to that music. I had not heard of him,
Yeah.
and I love it. And I put that on first thing this morning, listening to it, going, and then listening to you playing on that record.
Little Victories record.
Little Victories record, man. That is
Yeah.
so good. I just love. Let's talk
Man,
about him.
he is Chris is he's a force of nature, man. He's one of the few guys that gets mentioned in the same sentence as Steve Earle and Townes Van Zandt and those kind of guys, because he really is that amazing prime. And as a writer, um, he uh, it was another one of those things. So you get your next gig off your last gig. A buddy of mine was doing the gig, and the guy they had playing left. And so my buddy called and said, "Hey, do you think you want to do this?" And so uh, I went and checked it out, listened to the music, which was ridiculous, obviously. And
Mm,
so I was like, "Hell yes, I want to do it." So,
that's
um, so I went. And Chris is not. He's not. He's a pretty down to earth guy, pretty stoic, and you never. The thing about Chris Knight is you never have to wonder where you stand because he'll just tell you. But when I first got the gig, I mean, we did one rehearsal and then
wow.
we drove out to Texas and started playing shows. And so the only guidance I ever really got from him when I took the gig was, I said, "Man, is there anything you want? Is there something I should do or not do?" He said, "I just want it to be big and badass." And I said, "Well, I can probably do that." So, uh, and it was great, man. His music is incredible, and he's a really good guy, and afforded me the opportunity to make two records with him.
Yeah.
The first one, Dan Baird produced.
Hmm.
Who people don't know about Dan. Dan is he was one of the founding members of the Georgia Satellites.
Yeah.
He's had the Yahoos. He's had Homemade Sin. He's produced a ton of records. He's played on a ton of records. He's had his own bands, and he's a monster. Um, so it gave me a chance to work with him and become friends. We've been friends ever since that happened. Um, and the last one, he got Ray Kennedy, the Little Victories record. Ray Kennedy produced, so who's done all of Lucinda's records and Steve Earle's records, and so
Wow.
you know, both of those. Once again, it's kind of one of those watershed moments where you're like, well, shit, this is pretty serious business. So, but uh, it was a great experience, man, and being able to contribute to the music. Chris was very he was adamant that he wanted me to play on the record, which I was not aware of. The first one I did, which was Heart of Stone, which is the one that Dan produced.
Okay.
And so I had been with him for a while. We've been playing shows, and he was having conversation with Dan about making this record, and told Dan he wanted to use me on the record. So Dan came out and did several shows with us, and played several live shows. And later on, after the fact, we were sitting having lunch or something at some point. Once we'd either just made that record or were making that record, and he informed me that the reason he came out to do those shows was to check me out to make sure it was going to be okay
That's
if I played on the record. And I
wow.
said, "Well, I guess it was okay." He said, "Well, if it wasn't okay, you wouldn't be here." So, you know, um,
That's
but I
great.
mean, that was like, and those were some big shoes, man, because those first couple records, Chad Cromwell played on a couple of those, and then Greg Morrow played on a couple of them. So it's not like, not like I wasn't going in there with the deck stacked against me, but it was a great experience, man. It really was. Both of those records were, and I was really. felt really blessed too that Prine got to sing on the
Yeah.
Little Victories record, and God rest his soul after we lost him this year. So, I wouldn't change a bit of it, man. I mean, it was all, it all was very important in my journey here as a player. It was my first I mean, I'd gone and worked with uh, I did some gigs with Jason Aldean pretty early on, like right after he got signed with Broken Bow.
Yep.
He was just about, hey, we were out there playing Hicktown, but nobody had ever heard of it yet, and that kind of stuff. So I did some of that, and I played with some other artists, but that was the first time I was actually um, I felt like I was in somebody's band, kind of.
Yes.
And and that was a big deal for me, man, because that was another thing that I wanted to do when I came here. I'd done a lot of sessions and a lot of stuff in Atlanta, but it's like, man, to come here in this town with knowing what you know about who's here and what goes on here, um, you know, it was something I wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough to be able to, with those guys' help, make it happen. So.
That's awesome. How did the Joe Diffie gig come?
Well, again, I might sound like a broken record, but same thing, man. The guy that they had, who is another dear friend of mine, Nick Milliner, who's another great player, and we've known each other for years. He decided he was coming off the road, and so they needed somebody, and they deferred to the band and said, "Who do you want?"
Cool. Wow.
And so they called and said, "Do you want the job?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. I do want the
Wow.
job."
Did you audition at all, or were
I
you?
did not, man. My first three dates were
Yeah.
all fly dates.
Oh,
Two of them in Canada, one of them in Vegas. All backline gear, no rehearsals, no nothing. Yeah,
nope.
yeah, I've
Wow.
I've had a few of those. When I worked, I subbed a bunch of shows for my buddy Pat McDonald. I'm sure you know who Pat is.
Yes.
Another amazing Gretsch player as well, actually. But we've been dear friends for years, and he had some illness, some health issues several years back, and needed somebody to go out and cover shows with Charlie. So he called and said, "Man, what do you think about going out and doing these shows?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think that would be okay." So, but it was the same thing, man. It was like the show and blow. He got me some tapes of the show, and I learned it all and made myself some notes and got my tempos together and went out there. And the first time I met Charlie was standing on the deck at a giant arena somewhere in Texas the afternoon of the first show.
Wow.
So yeah, it's nerve wracking.
Yes.
But and that's another, as long as we're talking about amazing people that we lost, unfortunately, this year, he was another one. Charlie was an amazing cat, man. He was a great musician, and he was a gentleman. Uh, all of those guys in that band treated me with absolutely nothing but respect and love from day one. So, and I was that's stepping into a pretty big pair of shoes when you got to deal with McDonald's mess, because he's from another planet, man. He's a ridiculous player,
So many,
So
so many wonderful drummers. We
yeah,
have less
oh, dude.
than a half to go here, and I can't believe the hour is almost done here. Where can people find you on the web, Michael Grando?
You know, I'll just be really honest with you. I'm the absolute worst about all that stuff. I have an Instagram page, and I have my personal Facebook page, and people are more than welcome to get in touch with me through either one of those things. I don't honestly look at the Facebook much these days, but you can get me through Messenger or Instagram or whatever. So, I'm around. Once in a while, I'll post a goofy video of me trying to play the drums or something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you really need to work on getting it together.
I'm almost there, man.
You're almost a couple more decades.
The good news is I find myself with a pretty clear schedule these days to be able to work on it. So I think I'm either going to be a lot better or a lot worse by the time it's all over with. So we'll
I
see.
wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and just being such a great guy. And I've had such wonderful guests on this on this program, and I want to thank you so much for being such a great guy. Everyone, take care of yourself. We will be back next week with episode 22. Thank you, Michael. Take care.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you, man.